that being Todoroki, Azui, Aoyama, and Momo, stood in the fake city, waiting anxiously for the exercise to start. Well, except Todoroki, who didn't seem to be nervous at all. "You're rather calm, Todoroki," Azui pointed out. "Aren't you at least a bit nervous about what they could throw at us after seeing the first round, Karo?" "My ice can deal with whatever they throw at us," Todoroki said confidently, yet still using his typically icy tone. "You've met Midoriya and his children before, haven't you? Do you know what they might throw at us?" Azui shook her head. "I haven't seen Midoriya in a while, and thanks to his deal with DOC he's probably gotten quite a few new kids in the meanwhile. And even if he didn't, I wouldn't know which one of the kids I saw they could send at us." Todoroki didn't respond. "Even with your incredible quirk, I don't think we can rely on that alone," Momo spoke up. "After all, we can't harm the child in any way, so I'm not sure we can rely on power alone to secure victory." "My ice can also be a good tool to capture and immobilize," Shoto responded. "Unless the kid has some insanely powerful fire quirk, then we should be fine." But I think you are forgetting something," Aoyama said. Whoosh! Suddenly, from a few miles away, a massive pillar of flames erupted, piercing the sky with fire. It was so powerful it even caused the ground to shake slightly. "Nizu is a sadist," Aoyama finished. "TCH. Todoroki grits his teeth. "Let's go." Back in the observation room, the class watched as Netsu was revealed on screen, in all his flaming glory. "He's new, right? I've never seen him before," Achiko pointed out. "Ah yes, Netsu came in the last batch of children. He has a really powerful fire quirk that's really hard to control. He can already reach temperatures that rival Endeavor's, without even using any of the techniques Endeavor uses to increase his fire's heat," Izuku revealed, causing some of the class to balk in awe. "That's insane," Mineta shouted out in fear. "Although I suppose it should be expected for someone who comes from a home for overly dangerous children," Tokoyami pointed out. "Yeah, no kidding," Mina agreed. Back in the city. "Burn!" Netsu shouted as he incinerated 5 Beowulfs in a wave of fire. Yeah, Netsu knew today was gonna be fun. Being part of an exercise at UA already sounded fun, but then he was told exactly what his role was. His role being, use as much excessive force as possible and incinerate anything that moved, while Grim came at him in massive numbers. And so he flew around, burning away any Grim he found. Until he stumbled upon Team B, running towards him. "Alright. Let's see how strong UA students are." Without any explanation, Netsu brought his hand together and unleashed a fireball the size of a car at the 4 of them. While Azui, Momo, and Aoyama froze in fear, Todoroki froze the area in front of them, creating a massive icy wall that blocked the fireball and caused steam to cover the ground. "Hey, I can't see," Netsu complained, before remembering his lines. "You won't hurt me, villains. You and your monsters won't beat my fire." Netsu started throwing fireballs wildly, in every direction, absolutely destroying the environment around them. Todoroki kept up his ice wall, having to constantly reinforce it to keep up with the insanely hot flames. It was a mistake to underestimate them. Todoroki grit his teeth as the constant shift between cold and hot made his head spin. "We can't even get close," Momo said. "I told you, OCPs live up to their names," Azui said, keeping her distance from the ice. "Yes, but it appears we have other problems," Aoyama said, looking up. The other two turned around, while Todoroki kept his focus on keeping the fire at bay. They looked up behind them and all of them froze at what they saw. Roar! In the sky was a massive, grim dragon. Back in the observation room. "Is that a fucking dragon?" Kaminari asked as everyone looked to the screen in awe. So he actually made it. Izuku stared at the beast his son had created. It was about half the size of Kai, maybe a bit more, and looked absolutely terrifying. "This is Yami's quirk?" Ito was in shock. He remembered the little boy he escorted through the amusement park and couldn't imagine that such a small boy could make something like this. "Yeah, he showed me design like this before, as a drawing. He said it took way too much negative energy to create," Izuku explained. "Negative energy?" Shoji asked. Yami's quirk allows him to absorb people's negative emotions, and turn it into some kind of energy that he can then turn into the Grim. Izuku clarified. So in short, he can turn people's inner demons into outer demons. Tokoyami summarized. Basically, Izuku confirmed. That's crazy. He could build a huge army of monsters, and attack a city. And then all the anger and sadness and fear would let him make more and more. He could take over the world. Minetta shouted, over-exaggerating. I don't like to think about it that way, and I don't think he could do all that. He could certainly cause quite a bit of destruction, Izuku admitted, seeming almost pained to do so. Wait, is that thing making more grim? Mina asked as she pointed at the screen. Back with Team B. Team B watched in horror as the dragon's back bubbled, and sludge fell off the dragon onto the ground. The sludge changed shape until it had turned into two grim griffins. Okay, that is ridiculous. Azui knew that Niza was a sadist, everyone did, but how did he expect them to actually beat this thing? The griffins came at them, and the students had to be ready for it. Aoyama shot his laser at one of the griffins' heads, disorienting it, allowed Azui to jump up and wrap her tongue around it and slam it into the other griffin. Momo made a cannon and blasted both Grim, destroying them. We need to figure out how we're gonna take out the dragon, Momo shouted to her teammates. Then the dragon itself came down at them with its giant maw open. But before it could reach them, it was hit in the face by a powerful flamethrower attack from Netsu, who had flown around the ice to attack the dragon. Rah! The dragon flew away from Netsu's attack, higher into the sky, coming away from it with some burn marks and slight melting on his mask. Netsu followed the dragon up into the sky, leaving the hero students behind. We have to help him. If we help him against the dragon, then we can convince him that we're not villains, at least in the context of the test. Momo reasoned. Rag. More Grim came charging at the students, mostly Beowulfs followed by some Ursa. Todoroki, you and Aoyama should focus on the dragon and the child, Azui and I will take care of the monsters down here, Momo said, creating a spear. Right. Todoroki grabbed Aoyama and created a pillar of ice under them, that rose them higher and higher into the sky. When they finally reached the dragon, Netsu was chasing it, flying in a very sloppy fashion while shooting fireballs everywhere. Todoroki made another ice wall to block a stray fireball, and from behind them one of the griffins flew at them. I don't think so, Monstra. Aoyama unleashed the most powerful naval blast he could right at the griffin, destroying its head and killing it. I'll focus on the dragon, keep those griffins off me, Todoroki ordered. Aoyama dreaded how his stomach would feel when this was all over. Todoroki tried to make a trail of ice leading to the dragon, but Netsu's fireballs kept destroying it. TCH, I can't afford to hold back. Todoroki thought. If he was gonna fight this thing while Netsu was around, then he would have to use the full capability of his mother's quirk. And so while Aoyama shot the griffins out of the air, Todoroki waited patiently for the dragon to get closer. Netsu chased the dragon around with its flamethrower, until eventually, the dragon flew, only a few feet away from Todoroki. In an instant, Todoroki made a massive iceberg, that completely swallowed the dragon. Whoa! Netsu stopped for a moment, surprised by the sudden appearance of the iceberg. Crack. However, the iceberg wouldn't stay there for long, as the bridge Todoroki had made was too small to hold the weight of the massive iceberg, and it was about to collapse. Todoroki ran back to the ice platform, with Aoyama following. He could feel the frostbite nipping at his fingers and at his sides, but he had more important things to worry about. Because the iceberg was above Azui and Momo. Azui, Yayarozu, move! Todoroki shouted into his earpiece. Crack! The ice broke, and the iceberg went hurtling downwards. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Azui drop-kicked an Ursa to death, and Momo was impaling a Beowulf when they heard Todoroki's warning. There's an iceberg about to crash on you too. Move! Todoroki told them through the earpiece. Momo and Azui could quickly see the shadow of the iceberg, getting bigger and bigger very quickly as it approached them at an alarming rate. Azui acted quickly, and grabbed Momo with her tongue, and made broad leaps away from where they were. Crash! The iceberg hit the ground, only a little less than a dozen feet from where the two girls were. The impact broke the ice apart into hundreds of thousands of little pieces, that flew through the air like pieces of shrapnel. Momo made a shield, and blocked the ice shards, protecting both her and Azui from harm. When all was said and done, all that was left of the iceberg were chunks of ice and a cool mist that covered the ground. Did that do it? Momo asked hopefully. A few moments later, her question was answered, when a giant black figure emerged from the mist. Roar! The dragon rose up from the mist, towering over the two girls. It was damaged, with some burn marks and melted parts from Netsu's attacks, as well as cracks in its armor and cuts in its skin from being trapped in the ice and falling to the ground. The worst of its injuries were its wings. Now cut up, and filled with holes, they would no longer be suited for flight. Momo stepped back from the intimating beast, but as she did so she noticed that Azui was not doing the same, instead seeming groggy. All the frosty mist was making the frog girl very sleepy, and she was doing her best to keep from falling asleep, but she was very out of it. The dragon seemed to notice this, and charged at her, opening its massive maw to swallow her whole. Momo jumped at her classmate, moving her out of the way just in time for the dragon to miss her. The dragon turned its head towards the two down girls, and let out another fearsome roar. With the monster upon them and with Azui completely out of it and on the ground, Momo knew she couldn't dodge anymore and had to come up with another strategy. She quickly made a flare gun and shot it right in the dragon's face. Rah! The flare exploded in the dragon's eyes, not doing any damage but causing it close its eyes and flail its head around wildly, as it stumbled backward. Momo kept shot it in the face 2 more times, causing it to keep stumbling back. Unfortunately, Momo had run out of flares. She lifted up Azui and hoped to get away from the dragon while it was still stunned, but the dragon recovered before she got far. With its jaw open, it rushed at the two. And then a massive chunk of ice fell on its head. "Todoroki!" Momo shouted. The half-and-half teen himself came down with Aoyama on an ice slide, and the two of them ran over to their teammates. "We are glad to see you two were not crushed," Aoyama told them. "I apologize, I should have known the ice would fall," Todoroki said before he noticed the now unconscious Azui. "Is she injured?" "No, it seems like all this cold sent her into some sort of hibernation. She most likely won't wake up until we get her somewhere warmer." Roar! The dragon still wasn't done and rose up once more. The armor on its head was now heavily damaged, looking like it was about to fall apart. "TCH. Just stay down." Todoroki shivered from the ice crawling up his right side but released another wave of ice at the creature regardless. The ice covered the dragon once more, however this time the ice was weaker, due to Todoroki overusing his quirk, and the dragon quickly started breaking through. Momo saw that Todoroki was about to unleash another attack, and stopped him by putting her hand out in front of him. "You're shivering, we should retreat." "I'm fine," Todoroki insisted. "I know now may not be the best time to bring this up, but where is the boy?" Aoyama asked. Whoom! Suddenly from the sky, a giant wall of flames slammed into the dragon so hard it knocked all 3 students off their feet and blew them away. Todoroki made some ice to stop them from getting blown away any further, and an ice wall in front of them to protect them from the heat. Ag-hai! Todoroki struggled to maintain all the ice, the heat poured through, curing his frostbite but also making them all sweat intensely. Aoyama even passed out from the heat due to the fact he was in a suit of armor that only made the problem worse. They couldn't even look directly at the fire because it was so bright it would have blinded them. This went on for half a minute until the flames died out. Where the dragon once was now nothing but scorched earth and black smoke. Todoroki and Momo, after taking a few moments to get their bearings, got up and picked up their unconscious classmates. Is it over?" Momo asked. Back in the observation room. "Holy shit," Kaminari said in awe. "That kid just nuked the dragon." Jiro gaped, sharing her classmates' sense of awe. "I told you Netsu's quirk was powerful, although this is the first time I've seen him use an attack like this." Izuku was also surprised, but to a much lesser extent. Is he going to be alright? Surely an attack of this level must have some toll on his body?" Ida asked, concerned for the boy's well-being. Izuku shook his head. "Netsu's quirk has very little direct drawbacks. It's very hard for him to control and can cause a lot of property damage, but the only negative effects it can have on himself is if he breathes in the smoke, or if he's in a confined space and burns up all his oxygen. But in wide open spaces like this, he's pretty much fine so long as he's careful, although the lack of control over his quirk can make his ability to fly pretty sloppy and can cause him to dash." On screen the students saw Netsu try to land, only to smack into the ground face first. "Crash, can we please get him to Recovery Girl as soon as possible?" Izuku said with concern. "Of course." Niza leaned over to the microphone. "Will some medical bots please take Netsu Midoriya, Azui, and Aoyama to Recovery Girl, and will Mr. Todoroki and Ms. Yayarozu come back to the observation room?" After a few minutes, Netsu, Aoyama, and Azui had all been carted off to Recovery Girl. Azui was just asleep and relatively unharmed. Netsu broke his nose and was healed with Recovery Girl's quirk and was now taking a nap. And Aoyama had been overheated, so he was taken out of his armor and treated. The rest of the class, minus Bakugo, who was also still with Recovery Girl, was in the observation room. Alright, well you did technically pass the test. If this was a real situation, you two would have failed, Nisa told them, much to the two students' shock. If you were paying attention, you'll notice the Grimm made no attempt to attack Netsu. This was because obviously, we didn't want the young man to be harmed, but if this was a real situation, the villain would have obviously fought back. You allowed the child to fight the villain by himself for far too long. A moment that comes to mind is when Mr. Todoroki allowed the child to lure the dragon close to him, rather than attempting to lure him close, or attack with his own flames. Todoroki flinched but didn't respond. That's of course not even mentioning all the property damage and the fact that dropping an iceberg from that height would most likely harm if not kill civilians or allies. Nisa continued. The only reason I am no failing you all is because of the difficulty of the test. We understand, we will perform better next time, Principal Nizu. Momo said with an embarrassed bow. Todoroki did not respond. What is going on with him? Izuka wondered. He didn't use his fire at all during that test. I wonder why. Now with that done, let us move on to the next test. Nisa looked at Team C, who by now were very, very nervous. As they should be.